On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, Sandy Munro stops by to talk Cybertruck, Model Y, and more. Jay Leno stops by Tesla's design studio in Hawthorne to drive the Cybertruck. Plus, Tesla reduces their prices and more. What's happening, friends? Welcome to episode 252 of Ride the Lightning. It is your weekly Tesla unofficial podcast, this one for May 31st, 2020. And first, I wanted to start off by saying a welcome and a thank you to the new patrons, the kind folks that heard my message last week at the top of the show and kindly started supporting me on Patreon. It makes a huge difference to me, and I am just humbled and grateful. I thank you very much for that. And on that note, the next Patreon exclusive monthly bonus episode, that's all the extra calls that I can't get to in the course of the regular month of shows, they all go there. That I expect to get done this weekend. It's on my weekend to-do list. So if you are at the appropriate tier for that reward or higher, be on the lookout for that. I mean, you'll get an email, so no big deal there. But that should be in your inbox by the weekend's end. Basically, by the time you hear this, if all goes well. All right, well, there is plenty to talk about in the world of Tesla this week. Fun stuff, actually. This is a really, really fun week. Sandy Munro is on the show this week. Stay tuned for that later on after the news segment. I was able to get that interview done this week. I always get nervous. I mentioned it last week just because I had the Sandy Munro clip and I'd had the interview lined up. But I usually don't like to say those things ahead of time just because I feel like it's just tempting fate. Like some sort of scheduling issue happens and then the interview gets postponed. And that's why I never mentioned the Elon interview until it actually happened, because you just never quite know. But thankfully, I was able to sit down remotely, obviously, with Sandy Munro and talk about the Cybertruck, the Model Y, a little bit of Roadster. So stay tuned for that later in the show. But first, I wanted to start out with Jay Leno's Garage. So that episode did indeed air, the new season of Jay Leno's Garage. It seems like I saw parts of it on NBC, on CNBC, so it seems like it airs on at least a couple of the NBC networks. But in any case, the episode had some other non-Tesla things in it, but weaved throughout was a bunch of stuff with Elon. It really, I would say, it starred the Cybertruck vehicle-wise, but it did also feature the semi-truck and the Roadster. And I want to start by playing you a clip of Jay Leno driving the Cybertruck talking to Elon Musk. Check this out.
I mean, it feels very much like any other Tesla. You've got instant acceleration. The greenhouse is fabulous. I love how open it appears to be. And how close is this to what it will look like in production?
At Tesla, we always want to have the production car be better than the show car. It always drove me crazy when manufacturers would come out with this cool-looking show car, and then the actual production car would be way worse.
Right.
And you're like, man, you got us all excited about this sweet-looking car, and then the production one's it's terrible. We won't do show cars that aren't real. So I think we got the proportions here pretty close.
What would you change when it finally reaches production? What do you think you would do?
We're 5% too big, and if we just take all the proportions and drop them by about 5%.
Oh, you mean all the way around?
Yeah, so it's got to fit in a normal garage.
Right.
Yeah. And there's lots of little details that people wouldn't necessarily pick up consciously, just improving visibility. Having the glass like this is actually quite hard because it's so sloped.
Is that a special kind of glass? Is that different than normal windshield glass?
We are going to be using effectively a form of armored glass for the car. And the door panels of the car are the 300 series stainless steel, and it's so tough that it's bulletproof to a handgun.
And why is that important to you that it be bulletproof? I mean, I don't...
It's badass and super cool.
That's super cool. But see, I like that answer. It's a good answer.
Do you want your truck to be bulletproof or not?
Yeah, I guess I do. I guess I want my truck to be bulletproof.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. You know, you never know. When the apocalypse comes, you should be glad it's bulletproof. We want to be a leader in apocalypse technology.
Exactly.
Well, you heard Elon say there that the Cybertruck would be 5% smaller in the end. He actually walked that back before the episode aired, whether by coincidence or not, but he took to Twitter to address that. So plans have indeed changed since Elon recorded that, which, granted, he recorded that before the pandemic for sure. I don't recall exactly when off the top of my head, but anyway, it's far enough back that Elon is now deciding, no, they're going to stick with it. He took to Twitter this week saying, quote, "Reviewed the design with Franz last night. Even 3% smaller is too small. It will be pretty much this size. We'll probably do a smaller, tight-world truck at some point," end quote. So then that means the Cybertruck will remain about exactly the same size as an F-150, because that's, you remember from the initial reveal in November, that was the metric, that was the barometer against which the Cybertruck was measured from a size perspective. You remember Elon saying, we didn't cheat, it's the same proportion, same size as an F-150. Now, any future truck, he mentions there that would be smaller and lighter, I would imagine, would also have to be a Cybertruck. It would have to be in the Cybertruck family, call it, if you will, Cybertruck Junior. Because, seriously though, the stainless steel exoskeleton, that method of building the truck that they're using, I mean, that is a big reason, if not the big reason, that Tesla can make the Cybertruck as relatively affordable as it is. Because, and if they were to build a quote-unquote traditional smaller pickup truck with regular manufacturing processes like a paint shop and a full assembly line and use a mix of steel and aluminum in the construction, the way they do with the Model 3 and the Model Y, I would imagine that would probably cost more than the base big Cybertruck does. In fact, later on in the podcast, here's a teaser, in the Sandy Munro interview, towards the end, he addresses the cost of paint. And the number, it shocked me, maybe it'll shock you too. So that's part of the reason why I say I feel like, the Cybertruck method would probably have to be applied to a potential smaller Tesla pickup as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But first, Tesla's got many hundreds of thousands of full-size Cybertruck orders to fill. All right, elsewhere in the segment, Jay Leno checking out the Tesla Semi. Here's Elon and Jay talking about that.
Now, truckers are kind of like Harley riders and Porsche 911 owners. They conform to a certain type of deal. How do you convince them that this is better than what they have?
Yeah, this should be way cheaper to operate. So if you're driving, rig across country, the cost per mile matters a lot. It's fundamental. And the cost of electricity is much lower than the cost of diesel.
Well, sure. For most truckers, the price of gas is the difference between making a profit and breaking even.
We think the cost per mile will be probably less than half that of a diesel.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of a no-brainer on a cost per mile basis. Then just in terms of fun to drive, it's the size of a semi, but it's got the acceleration of a sports car.
Right.
So, let's say you're pulling a big load and you want to get on the freeway. You could be, 80,000 pounds max gross safely.
So this can pull 80,000 pounds?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It can pull more than that, except that's the legal limit.
So nothing really new in that particular segment, but I still think it's cool to hear Elon say, number one, that the limited production is still due to start this year, until I remembered, again, that this was filmed before the pandemic, so it's very, very possible that the timeline Elon mentioned there at the taping has since been pushed back. In fact, you remember, Elon spoke about that very thing in a general way, not specific to the Semi, but he did speak about things being set back by the pandemic and by the shutdown on Joe Rogan's podcast just a couple weeks ago. But still nice to hear Elon talk about the semi-truck, because really Tesla hasn't said anything about the Semi in a while. So even hearing not particularly new information just feels good. It's exciting. It's like, yes, this is still happening. On that exact note, Here is Jay asking very enthusiastically about the Tesla Roadster. Take a listen to this. This is the third and final clip I've got for you from Jay Leno's garage.
And of course, my favorite.
Yeah.
This is the one I'm waiting for.
The new Roadster.
Great looking car.
The new Roadster will be a whole new platform.
Right. Ready to go for a little ride?
Last year, Chief Designer Franz von Holzhausen took me for a hair-raising ride in this demo, the fastest accelerating streetcar I've ever been in.
We're going to be kind of unfair from a technology standpoint. For example, it's going to have an option to have rocket thrusters.
Rocket thruster?
Yes, from SpaceX.
All right.
Yeah.
How does that work? See, I don't know when you're kidding and when you're not now.
No, in this case, I am serious.
You're going to have rocket thrusters?
Yes.
And what will provide the thrust? There's no fuel in the car.
No, we're going to use ultra-high pressure compressed air.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a cold gas thruster.
Okay. All right.
The main thruster will be like behind the license plate.
Right.
So for acceleration, it drops the license plate, and that behind the license plate is a rocket thruster. That's like full-on James Bond. The base model will do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds.
Wow.
So the James Bond style license plate retraction and thruster, letting it loose. That's pretty cool. Now remember, there are supposedly other thrusters around the bottom of the car on the SpaceX package version of the Roadster as well. But yeah, how cool is it that the main one is going... How cool is that main rear thruster going to look? You know, if just hypothetically you were to accidentally push the button to activate it in the car with somebody behind you on the freeway and nothing but open space up ahead. You just the person behind you just sees the license plate come down, a cold gas thruster, and then per Elon's previous descriptions of this, apparently it'll make a really loud noise and then just boom, the car's gone. So that will be pretty cool. Although again, just I'm saying this with a laugh and a smile. It is almost certainly not going to be safe to ever use the SpaceX package on public roads. I would have to imagine that those thrusters are only going to be for track use only. And even then, on the track, at least speaking for myself, I would really want to make sure I had some kind of professional driving instruction before ever turning those things on, because they're going to be crazy. That's going to be, I cannot wait to see that thing in action. Now, as to the rest of the segment throughout the episode, nothing really new information-wise. I just wanted to play you a few interesting clips, but, that wasn't all that unexpected. After all, Elon, as I said, was just on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about how he couldn't talk details about the Plaid Model S or about the Roadster until those cars got their proper product unveilings. For me, the thrill of watching this Jay Leno's Garage episode really, honestly, was not only, as I said earlier, just hearing about them again, but literally seeing them out and in natural light. And in the Cybertruck's case, you got to see it on the road a little bit too, because we just don't really get that at Tesla events, which, and I say this respectfully, but I got to be honest, the Tesla events usually have pretty poor stage lighting, and they're at night. So you don't really get a great look at the cars that are being unveiled. I mean, the Roadster, in my humble opinion, I've said this before, but it looks almost alien in the daylight. Just, it looks like it came from 2050 back in time to annihilate all of the gas-powered sports cars. And the Cybertruck in daylight looks very, well, quite frankly, cyberpunk when it's out in the sunlight as well. I mean, I of course can speak from personal experience here. I recognize the cool glow of that stainless steel body in the sunlight very, very well from my DeLorean days. It's funny, sunlight and artificial light, and any and all kind of light reflects off of stainless steel very differently than it reflects off of a traditionally painted car. And another thing I would add too, if you're thinking about whether or not to take the time to actually go watch this Jay Leno's Garage segment, you get a brief but still really nice, clear look at the Cybertruck's dashboard and steering yoke in daylight, which again, we haven't really gotten. There are a whole bunch of test ride videos from the unveiling event, including my own. I mean, I posted mine on my YouTube page, but they're all at night. They're all under, it's dark, so it's tough to really see it. So you get a good look at that. So I would say give the segment a watch, give the show, the episode, I should say, give it a watch if you can. They take the Cybertruck through the Boring Company test tunnel there next to SpaceX. They play with the vault cover on the back of the Cybertruck. It shows it in action, like there's a button where it'll automatically retract and then deploy. So you get to see that and some more stuff too. So Jay Leno's Garage, check that out. Moving on this week, more excellent Tesla news if you are in the market. 3 of the 4 currently produced Teslas have gotten themselves a price drop. I want to give a hat tip to InsideEVs.com. That's where I first saw this story. The Model Y is unchanged in price. Not a surprise there. It's the newest vehicle. They're still ramping up production. Therefore, they've got plenty of demand that's yet to be met there. But the other cars got some nice price reductions. $2,000 on the Model 3 and $5,000 each on the Model S and the Model X. Though in that latter case with the S and the X, there is a trade-off. There is now at least for now, no more free supercharging on any newly purchased, on any new Model S or Model X. So thus, if you're curious, the Standard Range Plus Model 3 now starts at just under $38,000, while the base long-range Model S, again, 400-mile range car, starts at just under $75,000. That is for what you're getting, is a heck of a deal, I think. Again, it's obviously still not the cheapest car on the planet, obviously, but $75,000 for what you're getting, my goodness, that is impressive. And then the base long-range Model X starting at just under $80,000. So I see one of 2 possibilities here as the reason behind this price drop. And I want to acknowledge it's entirely possible that it might in fact be both. So first, Tesla might just be looking to goose demand here in what is not really so much the middle of the quarter anymore, heading towards the latter part of Q2, which is probably going to be a tough quarter because the company was shut down, the factory was shut down there for the first entire third of the quarter, first month of the quarter. So they might just be looking to goose a little demand, which, granted, I would think would probably not be a great sign in a vacuum for Tesla continuing their current streak of 3 straight quarters in the black. But then again, my other thought here is it's possible that Tesla's margins per vehicle, which is something that Tesla has been lauded for by Wall Street recently, that margin per vehicle has improved even more in recent weeks and months, and that Tesla's deciding, well, let's just eat into those bigger margins a little bit, try and pass the savings on to buyers in again, what is now a very uncertain economic time. Regardless, again, maybe it's one, maybe it's the other, maybe it's both, maybe it's something I'm missing entirely, but regardless, I will say this. With the Model 3 specifically, I really think, I've said this about the Standard Range Plus before, so I'm going to just reiterate it now. I think the Standard Range Plus is an incredible value. If you're considering a Model 3, by all means, I would tell you, I very much recommend buying as much range as you can afford. Range is king. If you're able to swing the long range, I highly recommend doing so. You don't know in what ways that might come in handy during the life of ownership with the car. Of course, winter weather will sap some of that range. Hot summer weather with the air conditioning can eat into that a bit as well. There are all sorts of circumstances and conditions where, having more range is pretty much always a good thing. But if you're looking for, you're trying to break in any way you can to a Tesla, $38,000 for what is a 250-mile range car. Remember, it used to be 240. 250-mile range car that you can take anywhere thanks to the supercharger network. This car could be your only car. It's not a thing where, it's just a city car, which again, as I think I like the Chevy Bolt. I think it's they've still got their incentives, and with those incentives, it's a reasonable buy. It's got about a 240. They might have even revised their range too. I admit I haven't kept much track of it, but realistically, the Bolt is only a city car. You can't drive it 2 states over to go visit your in-laws. It's just not a car you can do that with because of the charging infrastructure. But the Standard Range Plus, 250 miles, supercharger network. It also gets all of the same software updates that the rest of the Tesla fleet does. To me, that is just a really impressive package, and that's even without any federal tax incentives, which of course have long since expired now. Some states, though, still have them, which means for some people, it could even be a few $1,000s less than even that $38,000. So the Standard Range Plus Model 3, that is tremendous value in my humble opinion. Next this week, I've got a few more stories. This one is in regards to Tesla's annual shareholders meeting. It will take place this year on July 7th, which is a month later than usual. Typically, it's in early June. Presumably, I'm guessing it was pushed back so that Tesla can hopefully have it in person. And yes, they are indeed intending to do just that at the usual spot, which is the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California, which is not too far from Tesla's corporate headquarters in Palo Alto. So that is the intention, at least for now. Tesla did issue a statement on that topic noting, quote, "Although we currently intend to hold the 2020 annual meeting on July 7th, 2020, and in person, we will continue to monitor public health and travel safety protocols required or recommended by federal, state, and local governments. If necessary or advisable to protect our personnel and stockholders, we will change the date, time, location, and/or format of the 2020 annual meeting." So it sounds like they're very much open to it being a totally live stream digital virtual event where I'm sure that shareholders could still register and submit questions, which then somebody at Tesla is gonna choose those. Now, even if you're not a shareholder, if it's safe to do so at the time they hold this, and if indeed it gets held in person, it might be worth swinging by. I'm already thinking about it, thinking about just going down there, not even sitting in, because last year they had the Model Y prototype and the Roadster prototype parked out front on display. So this year, that means if they were to do the same thing, and by the way, the year before that, they had the white Roadster Mule. That would have been 2018. So the one that's not the red drivable, fully functional one, but just the rolling mule, that white one. So you still got to see the Roadster in all its proportions. So the last 2 years now, they've had prototypes sitting out front of the shareholder meeting. So this year they could very well have the Roadster again and the Cybertruck. You might get a chance to see it in person. I mean, it'll be roped off, of course, but you get a chance to see it in person potentially, and it would be, again, in daylight, which I highly recommend you take the opportunity to do that if you have the chance to do it, if you're in the Bay Area, and again, if it's safe to do so from a public health perspective. So July 7th, circle the calendar there. I will, of course, have full coverage on that on whatever episode follows July 7th. I guess that'll be the, what is it? It's going to be the July 12th episode of this podcast. And next, Model 3, more good news this week. This is a fun week, all fun stories. The Model 3 was the #1 selling car in California, period, for Q1 2020. Saw this story on Clean Technica. The Model 3 beat out the Honda Civic, the Toyota Camry, the Toyota Corolla, and the Honda Accord, according to data from the California New Car Dealers Association. Now, you may remember I've reported their data before, and when I've previously talked about this in their reports, the Model 3 had moved up the California charts, but hadn't yet topped them. Now it has done so. The Model 3 selling, I guess there were this many registrations, which, okay, we'll just, for simplicity's sake, we'll call it sales. 18,856 Model 3s sold in California in Q1 2020. 18,001 Honda Civics. So, it's close, but it's not razor thin. It's a reasonable amount. The Camry, 17,871, not too far behind the Civic. The Corolla at 15,500, and the Accord at 12,500. And then I mentioned this one more car here, and I promise I'm not trying to do any fanboy like Nelson from The Simpsons, like none of that. But I'm gonna mention the BMW 3 Series sales that were in this report only because Tesla themselves, meaning Elon, before the Model 3 came out, had always used the 3 Series as the benchmark to measure the Model 3 up against. That was the car that the 3 was sort of targeting. That was the customer base. That's who. That was the main competitor that Elon saw for the Model 3. And the 3 Series, again, Model 3, 18,856. The 3 Series in Q1 in California did 3,473. So an incredible discrepancy between those two cars. And it's, again, I'm not trying to dance on any graves, not that the 3 Series is dead, but I say that only to point out the incredible success that the Model 3 continues to be, and so well deserved. I want to say, in all sincerity, congratulations to the Tesla team here. They earned it. They absolutely earned it. The Model 3 is just a phenomenal car. I love mine. I have said this before, but the Model S 2012, the S had to be great because the company would have straight up died if it had been anything less than a home run. It could have been a good car, but the company still probably would have failed. It had to be a great car, a car of the year, which it was, in order to get anybody just out of that traditional internal combustion engine mindset in that luxury sedan segment to come over and say, you know what, I'm going to look at this Tesla Model S. It had to be that, I say perfect, I don't mean it in the literal sense, but it had to be that good, and it was. Then you had the Model X, which, hey, it shot for the moon. It didn't quite make it sales-wise. It's a car full of a ton of cool tech, and it is an amazing vehicle. But it had its quirks, it had its build quality issues, its challenges early on. You've heard Elon say a million times, it's the Fabergé egg of automotive production. And then, of course, the Model 3 comes next, which, like the S, had to be a home run. It had to. Or else Tesla, again, might not have made it. Elon has called it a bet the company moment. But maybe, okay, at the very least, if the 3 had been less than a home run, then maybe Tesla would have only ever been a niche luxury automaker making S's and X's and maybe a Roadster, and that's it. And guess what? The Model 3 team nailed it in concept and in execution. It is wonderful. As I said, I adore mine. I know many of you love yours. And hopefully the Model 3 will still be ascending sales-wise even with the Model Y now making its way into the marketplace. So congrats to the Tesla team, Model 3 #1 in California for the first quarter of 2020. Finally this week, one more story before I get to the Sandy Munro interview. Elon Musk is now, on paper anyway, in present day stock value, $775 million richer. CNBC reports Tesla confirmed that CEO Elon Musk earned the first tranche of his massive incentive payout in a document filed with the SEC on Thursday. The tranche is comprised of about 1.7 million shares of Tesla and would be valued around $775 million based on Thursday's closing market value. The stock was actually up a little bit on Friday, so add a little more to that. Thursday's filing, which also set a July 7th date for the shareholders meeting, which I just told you, said as of the date of this proxy statement, one of the 12 tranches under this award has vested and become exercisable, subject to Mr. Musk's payment of the exercise price of $350 per share and the minimum 5-year holding period generally applicable to any shares he acquires upon exercise. So I guess, as pulling back from CNBC's report for a second, I guess it's not necessarily he wouldn't be netting $775 million in today's stock value because he had to buy in at $350 a share. But anyway, CNBC continuing, it is not clear if Musk has yet exercised the options. Musk earned the first portion of his stock options for keeping the company's market capitalization, this is what it took to get this, at a $100 billion market cap on a 30-day and 6-month trailing average. Musk does not take a salary at this point. Here's the interesting part. He owned about 18.5% of the company as of May 1st, according to FactSet, a stake worth around $24 billion. By Thursday, the proxy filing revealed Musk's stake in the company had risen to 20.8%. Well, there is absolutely no doubting from anyone at this point that Tesla has done incredible things that with nothing but respect to the thousands of brilliant, hardworking Tesla employees, I do believe that Tesla would not have done what they have done, or at least not as soon as they have done them without Elon. So I think this is, I say, get paid, Elon. You deserved it. You earned it. And I am glad to see him be in control of a larger chunk of the company. All right, that wraps it up for the Tesla news this week. Stick with me, though. I'm going to throw it to the Master Chief himself, Steve Downs, and then I'll come right back with the Sandy Munro interview. It's about 27 minutes long, I think. We had a nice conversation. I hope you enjoy it, and then stick with me. I'll come back after that with your pro tip of the week and closing thoughts. So here comes Sandy Munro.
This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Sierra 117. You're listening to Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast. You know, that Cybertruck looks a lot like a warthog, doesn't it? Master Chief, out.
My guest this week, I'm extremely pleased to be joined by Sandy Munro, the CEO and, per his official job title, Design Prophet at Munro & Associates. Sandy, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you.
So, as I've been telling my audience week after week here on Ride the Lightning, I have been learning a lot from your videos as someone who, I mean, I already, I say this humbly, I already kind of feel like I know a lot about Teslas just from owning one and being so interested in them, but I've learned a lot more that I never knew thanks to your videos. And the first thing I wanted to ask you is, how many hours, you put up 40 videos on the Model Y. How many hours did you and your team actually spend with the car dissecting it? Like, how much time goes into a project like that?
Okay, I'm going to run out of fingers and toes here. I'm going to, just let me think here for a second. It's probably about 5.5 or 6 man years.
I believe
so there's
it.
about 2,000 hours in a year, man year. Yeah, I would say yes. I would say that it's at least that. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. I mean, it's what surprised you as you worked on the Model Y? You started with it in one piece and you drove it a bit, and then you started tearing it apart. What surprised you the most about the Model Y at the end of the project?
Surprised me the most. Actually, I have to tell you, I used to race cars, and probably one of the things that I was the most surprised at was how quick and how agile and how defined the ride is. That's something I was not quite expecting. That thing rides like it's on rails. It's got a very nice ride. Like I've said it a couple of times. I drive a Jeep Wrangler, so I don't I don't really get a nice ride very often. But I will tell you the ride is phenomenal. And like I said, I used to race, and that car, I'd take that on the track tomorrow, even though I'd probably lose. But I spun around the corner into our driveway.
Yeah.
When I first got it, and I was up around 50, 60 miles an hour, and that thing, I didn't even hear the tires squeak.
Right.
It was a fabulous ride. Everything else is similar to what the Model 3 was from a ride and drive standpoint, but the how fast that you can, I mean, that thing really hops. I really enjoyed that car. As a matter of fact, it's the first EV I've ever recommended. Period.
Yeah, I played that clip of you saying that, which was, I said to my audience, I thought it was high praise coming from you. I mean, you've literally seen it all. So
pretty much, yeah.
It's great to hear that. Yeah, it's you of course you drove and tore down a performance Model Y for the exact reasons you mentioned. I had waited. I waited to buy the performance Model 3. So because you had done the teardown, your experience was with one of the original rear-wheel drive non-performance Model 3. So I could imagine how stepping up to a performance Model Y would really knock your socks off. It's really quite a difference in the motor setup and the two cars.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing difference. Amazing.
So what is the most fun part of your job at this point? Is it really fun
getting paid
to live well? Is it fun to actually to literally tear into a car, or is there another aspect of it that appeals to you more?
It's exciting. I like a lot of vehicles are pretty boring. They're the same old. They have a different skin, or maybe they have some small attribute or something that makes them unique. But for the most part, they're the same over and over and over again.
Yeah.
This car, the 3 and the Y both, they're unique because there's quite a bit of new technology. I will tell you, the most technology we've ever seen in any car was the hideously ugly BMW i3.
Right.
But it was loaded. I mean, the carbon fiber,
yeah.
the castings that they had, all kinds of stuff was absolutely brilliant. And that's what makes you get up in the morning, at least for me anyway. But the Tesla, taking that apart's got to come in when you get below the skin, taking away all that other stuff, and then you start having a look at the electronics and the motor design and everything. That's really exciting. We find something new every day. In fact, we're still finding new stuff right now, and we're not quite done the report. Mm-hmm. And so guys are coming back saying, "Hey, did you know?" And then there's another thing that we're adding to the report. But it's definitely unique. And again, we don't tear apart the whole car when we're doing other analysis, like for. Many of our customers wanted to know about inverter converters and the electric motors themselves and whatnot. Yeah. When we do one of those, when we're doing that sort of stuff, I don't care about the seats. Nobody cares about the body. All they want to know about is the electronics, the wiring, the electric motors, that sort of thing. And that's where Tesla becomes the most exciting product that we've looked at, and that's saying a lot.
So were you, as a kid, Did you like to take things apart and figure out how they work? Have you been kind of training for this your whole life, in a way?
Well, okay, so when I was young, people don't believe it, but I started working on a farm when I was about 9. Farmers have a tendency to think that, if you're sitting around eating, you should be doing something. So one of my first jobs wasn't really tearing them apart, but trying to fix them after the farmer broke it. So so I learned a lot of things on vehicles and farm equipment. I learned quite a bit in my youth, trying to make them so that they would work again. So that part of me is still inquisitive, if you like. And as time went by, I fixed my own cars. I had a tendency to buy race cars, and I had a Jaguar that continuously needed something done. So I was deep into fixing and repairing and taking apart and putting back together, or taking broken stuff and putting it back together my whole life. It's been a curse and a blessing at the same time, I guess.
Is there anyone, in your estimation, from what you've seen, is there anybody that's even close to Tesla in the EV world?
No. Short answer.
Yeah, I mean, no. It's that's sort of as Tesla fans, and you kind of look in the marketplace, we kind of see it as that way. Like, yeah, there's just, other than Porsche with the Taycan, they seem to have made an absolutely spectacular vehicle with it's a price tag to match, but yeah, it seems great. But yeah, that's why I was curious to hear it from what you've seen, and it's I don't know, what do you attribute that to, Sandy? Is it just how the continuous improvement that you talked about on one of your videos? Is it the talent there, or is it just sort of a magic secret sauce combination?
Actually, things were tough during the Obama years, and lots of people in Detroit lost their jobs, and lots of people at NASA lost their jobs, and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. And these were people who were young and had master's degrees and PhDs and had a lot to offer the planet. And unfortunately, they wound up in the unemployment line. So the clever thing that Elon Musk did was he hired all these guys, and he brought them out to California, and he stuck them into jobs that they really and truly wanted to be in. So rocket ships, big diggers, even flamethrowers and cars. So you get what you pay for, and he got some of the best talent on the planet. And that's the other thing. He didn't just look here in the United States. He looked all over the world to find the talent that he wanted. And so consequently, what you see is that expertise, or that enthusiasm, the inventiveness and whatnot. If you put inventive, knowledgeable people in an environment, and you shove pizza boxes underneath the door and say, "Don't come out until you're finished," you're going to get some pretty amazing things. And that's kind of like what Tesla did. They used the investors' monies wisely, and came out with wonderful things. And that's why I think most of the people that sold short, they don't understand that mode, right. And so consequently, that's why. In fact, there's still people saying, it's going to collapse. Oh, you better sell your stock. It's $800. I mean, when do you know that the Titanic has actually hit the iceberg? Right. I mean, really? So anyway, I don't want to get into that, but there's lots and lots of financial folks that'll come on and talk about blah blah whatever, and they'll throw rocks at Tesla. But at the end of the day, Tesla did two things. One, what I just talked about, hiring the best people. And two, I talked about this a little while ago. I can't remember to who, but Elon Musk said that his biggest worry is that he won't get the talent because it's been blocked by screening people who screen people, like HR people. Because HR people are trained to look at, what was your grade level? Did you have some fun after school projects? Bullshit as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that kind of stuff is very, very popular with HR kind of people. But in most cases, the people that I hire, some of my guys have got PhDs and master's degrees. Others have got engineering degrees, and some don't have anything. And you know what? Some of the ones who don't have anything come in with, they're brilliant. They just didn't get the opportunity.
Right.
And they spend their whole life doing nothing but focusing their attention on those things that interest them. And those things that interest them are the things that I'm looking to hire. I want guys. I've got guys here that electronics guys, all they want to do is work on electronics things. They spend their time at night not watching TV, but searching out new inventive ways of manufacturing things, or inventing new ways to send signals, or make computations like in an IC. That's the kind of people that I want to hire. I want to hire people that are enthusiastic about their job. Everybody's got things that they need to do outside, family things. I don't care about that so much. I want to care about the guy that's going to be a workaholic and really, really loving his job. That's what I want.
Well, I've got a bunch more questions for you. I'm starting to run out of time.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to get into, because we're going to get into Cybertruck here in a second, which I know you're super excited about. But to kind of close the loop on Model Y and everything you've been doing there, and you've already, of course, did the Model 3 a few years ago, what, in your experience now, should terrify other automakers about Tesla? And also, what is the biggest area that Tesla still needs to improve based on everything you've seen?
Okay, so let's talk about the terrifying things first. If I was working for another automotive company, I would want to know everything I could find out about the electronics that are in these cars. And I'd like to try and find out how their electric motors do what they do, because we're still mystified. We've got lots of theories and we know a lot of information, but those are the two things right there that would run terror into. And quite frankly, Toyota and Volkswagen have both said it's going to take us a long time to try and catch up on these electronics. Okay, so that's the terrifying part. The part that I am really sad about is still the worst paint job. Period. They really need to go in there and do something with paint. And in the teardowns but in the evaluations that we're doing here with the Ram, the F-150, and the Chevy Silverado, oh man, I'm telling you what, the Ram, we put because they're both red cars, we put the red truck and a red car together, and we're looking at it. My God, the guys at Tesla should go over and talk to the people over at Chrysler and say, can we please borrow whoever it is that's doing your paint jobs? We need that person for a little while, like 6 months to a year, to straighten out our area. That's the worst part. So that's where they need to do something about that. That and fit and finish. So.
That is a little bit of a bummer to hear that after they've been manufacturing for this long. But hopefully, people like you pointing it out, it will hopefully improve. So, all right, Cybertruck. Now, Sandy, a quick background on me. You don't know this. I owned a DeLorean for many years. It was my dream car as a kid.
Really?
And I would get asked all the time about the stainless steel body. So, I wanted to ask you, from your expert perspective in the automotive industry, why haven't any other automakers, until Tesla coming up now, bothered with a stainless steel body for a car? Is it a cost issue, longevity, the fact that the bodies last too long, or both, or something else? I'm just sort of curious, because for me, having owned that car for 12 years, the stainless steel was my favorite part of the car. It was because I just didn't have to worry about it. There was no waxing. There was no, if it got scratched, I could take the scratch out with a heavy-duty Scotch-Brite pad. So for you, why has no one else done this?
So, you had a DeLorean. Well,
I did.
I worked on the DeLorean. I tried to salvage the car. So, because it was dying. I was working for Modern Engineering. Okay. Actually, I was working for Howling Engineering, who was working for Modern Engineering, who was working for somebody else. And my job was to try and figure out why it was that if you close the door, run down the window, the car would stop. There was a whole bunch of things, little idiosyncrasies that car had.
Right.
Now, as far as your stainless steel body is concerned, okay, the stainless steel was very thin, and it cost a fortune to make those panels, and they had to continuously do polishing and whatnot for the doors, for the doors, but every other part there was stainless steel in there. Mm-hmm. They had to go and polish those things up all the time because the stainless steel just beats the daylights out of stamping dies. So the reason that you don't see any more stainless steel products is because of the DeLorean. Everybody learned a lesson there. Nobody wanted to do that again. Nobody wanted to be John DeLorean and have a problem. So.
Well, here we go. Tesla's going to do it, though. They're going to put that stainless steel, different grade of stainless on the truck, but nevertheless, it will be. I think people are going to be customers. I think will be very happy with having a stainless steel body on their truck that they just don't really have to worry about. So Elon and the chief designer, Franz von Holzhausen at Tesla, have talked a little bit about how the Cybertruck's going to be built, which I know is of big interest to you, and that's a big part of the expert analysis you provide is sort of how much does this cost? I watched a podcast with you from right after the Cybertruck reveal where you were talking about how much simpler it's going to be than, say, the F-150 or something like that. But can you kind of explain in a bit more detail just how this thing is going to be built and what the cost savings, not literal numbers, but what sort of the cost looks like in general terms with this origami, folding the stainless process, and the complete lack of a paint shop?
Well, I've talked about this quite a bit, and actually the podcast that we released today, actually, is going to talk a lot more about it. You can get a lot of detail
Excellent.
there. It takes a long time for me to get through everything, and that's a really long video for us.
Well, if you've got something up, I can certainly just point people that way.
Yeah, exactly. So, but let me just say it simply.
Yeah.
If I was going to make a unibody, because that's basically what you've got there, a unibody, or for the guys in Europe, they call it a monocoque. You have two options. One is to use an exoskeleton, which is like the Cybertruck, and one's an endoskeleton, which the Honda Ridgeline has. So those are the only two options. And if you go online and have a look at what the Honda looks like under the skin, oh my God, it's hundreds and hundreds of parts and thousands of hours of fooling around. So if you look at the exoskeleton, you're looking at very simple, clean lines. Okay, there's a lot of welding, and that's fine. That's all TIG welding, and it's going to be like 100% welded, and it's going to be 100% done by a robot. So it's going to be, for the most part, a really, really simple and small, very small body shop. And without the paint, there's no paint needed. Okay, now we're talking about $500 million.
Wow.
That's the number that you'd need if you're looking at trying to build a car at scale. So you're looking at $150,000 a year, or even $100,000 a year. I'm going to need a really expensive thing to put the paint on. That's kind of like that's kind of what your big differentiation points are. No paint. And very, very simple tooling.
Boy, I didn't realize the numbers were that eye-popping on it. That's crazy.
You can't believe it. Think about this. there's millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in all those little teeny tiny pieces that you've got to make for the endoskeleton. Yeah. And then you got to really dig into your pockets, because you're going to be pulling out more millions of dollars to do the body panels. And you usually you have two sets of dies minimum to make sure that you can keep up with production.
Right.
And they continuously have to be polished. So it's a big deal.
So real quick before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about one of Tesla's other future cars, the next generation Tesla Roadster. Now, I don't know if you dabble much in supercars in your line of work, but I am of the opinion that car is probably going to have a carbon fiber body for weight and strength reasons. The original Tesla Roadster was carbon fiber. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Okay, so first off, Munro has worked on two F1 racing car companies, and we've worked on some supercars. I have NDAs, I can't talk too much about them, but I will tell you that carbon fiber has come a long way since hand layups and things like that. I personally, if I was going to be making a car under 50,000 units a year, I would make the thing out of carbon fiber. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because if you think the tooling is cheap for the Cybertruck, you cannot believe how cheap it is to make a carbon fiber components. The newer methods, thermoforming methods and whatnot, they can crank out lots and lots of parts, but the molds they don't wear out.
Huh.
I mean, there's very little pressure to push them into place, these flat panels into place, and when you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
And then basically it's a lot of glue and a lot of robots with either heaters or light systems to put them together. So I personally, if I was going to make a supercar, it would definitely be out of carbon fiber, and I can tell you that I could make it for cheap, a lot cheaper than a conventional, any kind of conventional vehicle, whether it's aluminum or steel or magnesium and aluminum, whatever. The combination doesn't matter to me. Carbon fiber should be the cheapest way to go.
Interesting, but you sort of mentioned under 50,000. So is there a point where the economics on it flip, and if we don't see mass-produced cars that are entirely carbon fiber for the most part?
It gets too expensive and it's too slow.
Okay.
You move up quickly to aluminum.
Yeah.
Depending on what sort of vehicle you've got, and then after that, it's impossible to beat steel. Steel is extremely inexpensive, and it forms nicely and things like that. So there's certain points where it makes sense to do this versus that.
Right.
And it makes sense for carbon fiber up to about 50,000 or less. And over that, it starts to look at aluminum as being your optimum choice. And then after that, it's steel and steel all the way.
Interesting. I like learning things like that. That's cool. Now, I've got to let you go, but before I do, you're not here for your health, Sandy. You're here, you've got a YouTube channel, Munro Live. You're sort of pivoting your operations a little bit, at least as far as the public visibility goes. You've announced that you're going to be doing as much pre-Cybertruck coverage as possible leading up to the Cybertruck, because no doubt you, like me, have seen the massive interest in all things Cybertruck. So can you kind of explain to my audience, give yourself a plug here, what are you up to with Cybertruck, and what are you going to be doing on your channel here in the coming months leading up to the truck's release?
Well, actually, we've already started a series that compares the F-150 and the Chevy Silverado, and the Ram. And the introductory thing came up last week. I can't remember. I think it was on Friday or something like that. The first issue is out today, and there'll be 4 more after that.
Great.
Once a week. I can't do this. I have a day job as well. I think you're going to be really excited. The number of comments that we've gotten back from these two videos is pretty staggering. I thought because it was like about a half an hour long, we were going to have everybody dropping off, but actuality, the numbers are huge. They're bigger than normal because there's lots of stuff to go and have a look at. There's lots of stuff to see. So that's the good news there. But we can't stay alive like that. So what we really are trying to do is get people to go to sales@leandesign.com, and that's where we sell reports. And if you happen to be an engineer and you need to know something about the Tesla Model Y, the Tesla 3, the BMW i3, or a myriad of other, like there's a 10 motor study. We've got studies that show all the costs and all the little doodads inside of all the electronics units. And the big thing right now is thanks. The big thing right now is talking about the what do you call them? The ADAS systems, and so we're actually pumping those out as well. So if you need to know anything about any of those systems, then contact us at sales@leandesign.com.
Brilliant. Sandy Munro, I really appreciate you taking the time. The YouTube channel, Munro Live, Munro is the proper spelling there. Sandy, I very much appreciate it. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much to Sandy for taking the time to come on the podcast. I am going to hold the Ride the Lightning calls for this week because I'm already at an hour here, so I want to be respectful of your time. But keep those calls coming if you want to react to something in the Sandy interview, something in the news this week, any Tesla question, comment, discussion topic. Send it in. I'll give you the info here real quick. One of two easy ways you can send in a call. Either way, please limit your call to 90 seconds or less so that I can get to as many calls each week as possible. And you can either use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, record your question, and email that file to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can call and leave a message on the Ride the Lightning hotline. It is a toll-free number. Dial it up anytime. That number is 1-888-989-8752. Again, that's 1-888-989-TSLA. All right, let me move on now to the back part of the show with the video game recommendation for the week. As if you're still at home, still working from home, still staying safe at home, if you're able to, I wanted to mention Halo the Master Chief Collection this week. Now, you may have heard, depending on how close you follow the world of video games, you may have heard about this game's absolutely nightmarish launch from a technical perspective, because this actually came out, almost 6 years ago. It'll be 6 years this fall. 2014 this thing released, but to the developer's credit, the team at 343 Industries at Microsoft, that team has put in an incredible amount of continuous work over the past several years, and now it really is everything that it set out to be originally. It's a great way to get ready for Halo Infinite on the new Xbox Series X this holiday, the new console launching this holiday, and it's the first new mainline Halo in 5 years. The series has never gone that long between mainline entries. I adore Halo. It is just a wonderful science fiction story, great first-person shooter gameplay. It's been a great series for 2 decades now, and the Master Chief Collection rounds up Halo 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the side story Halo 3 ODST, as well as they've even got Halo Reach in there now, which is the prequel. So there are actually 6 Halo games in this thing. So if you just get it all, and it's there, and all the multiplayer's there, and it works great. They're now bringing it to PC. I think they're working through some initial issues on the PC side, but if you're playing and buying on Xbox One, it is really fantastic. So enjoy that if you're interested. And the pro tip of the week this week, Mike from Charlotte went on a road trip and, found out something interesting about eating at superchargers. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Ryan, this is Mike from Charlotte, North Carolina. Just thought I'd share a really cool pro tip idea. My wife and I recently did a road trip down to Cocoa Beach, and with a lot of the dietary restrictions for her, it kind of just limited to what we were able to eat by superchargers. But something that I have not seen a lot of information about is the fact that DoorDash does a great job of delivering to superchargers. So if you just input kind of roughly when you're going to be arriving, and you can use the address location, and then in DoorDash or Postmates or anything like that, you can just put driver details or driver instructions saying, hey, I'm at the Tesla chargers, and it's pretty common sense. Doesn't really work well at airports, but any place that's normally like a shopping center or just a common, easier to spot area, it works out really, really well. We were able to eat really good food and utilize the benches outside. So hope that helps. Thanks for what you do.
I never would have thought of that, Mike. I have a dairy allergy myself, so your call, your pro tip there really hit home for me, because I have to be very careful about my food choices when I'm out as well. I'm going to keep that pro tip in mind for the next time I'm on a trip in the car. Thank you very much for calling in. I appreciate that. And again, if you've got a pro tip of the week, something interesting about your car that's maybe not obvious, maybe it's not in the manual, or in, like with Mike there, you heard kind of a more Tesla experience type of thing, I'd love to hear about it. I love the pro tips of the week. They are great. I think they're a nice little cherry on top at the end of the show. So please send it in. You can send it in the same way that you send a phone call my way as well. All right, before I go, I want to say thank you to Immaculate Reflections and remind you that not only are they the probably most awesome Bay Area detailer, and I say that, of course, very biased, because I know I've gotten to know Jeff at Immaculate Reflections really well. Just a tremendous person and a meticulous car detailer, does incredible work. He is offering discounts for listeners of this podcast. You got to mention the podcast and go from there, and hopefully you'll be happy with the result, both discount-wise and then the work. So whether you're doing a full just clay bar wash, wax, a nice deep clean for your car, or you want to do the paint correction, you heard Sandy Munro talk about paint quality being the number one issue that he feels that Tesla has yet to resolve. So a good detailer like Immaculate Reflections can really clean up a lot of those paint issues. He did for me on my car when I got mine. So paint correction, paint protection film, ceramic coating, whatever you want to do, Jeff will work with you to get it done. Let him know your budget and what you're thinking, and he'll make it happen. So irdetailing.com. That's the Immaculate Reflections website. Visit it, get in touch with Jeff there. Meanwhile, abstractocean.com, as always, has a wonderful stock of Tesla accessories, both for you and for your car, kind of neat aftermarket things, improved lighting kits being a big one. You want to do like the bat signal underneath your car with when those they call them puddle lights. When you open the door to the car, the light that shines down from the open door, you can swap that out very, very easily through the kits at abstractocean.com. And you can change that to the Tesla T logo that shines down, super cool. You can do the Model 3 logo or S or X, depending on what you've got. So there's that. There's the center console vinyl wrap kits to change the look and feel of the center console that is otherwise very prone to scratching and fingerprinting, etc., etc. Just browse around, see what they've got, abstractocean.com, and when you're done, pile everything you're going to buy into your shopping cart, and then use the coupon code RTLPodcast, all one word, RTLPodcast at checkout, and you will get 15% off of your first order at abstractocean.com. PureTesla.com/RTL is your one-stop shop for your dash cam and Sentry mode needs. 128 gigabyte kit is $49, ships free anywhere in the US. Same with the $69 kit that's 256 gigabytes. Fun fact, I realized I actually had to go back and check. I've had my kit for 6 months now, my pure Tesla kit. And just the last time I took the car out over the weekend to my favorite dog walking spot, I filled up the 128 gig. So it took me 6 months to fill it up. So then I finally had to take it out of the car, bring it up, wipe it, and then put it right back in the car. So I know it's not going to be filling up again for quite a while. But anyway, it comes fully formatted, ready to go, just straight out of the package, right into your car, all set, Mac or PC compatible, no issues there. puretesla.com/RTL for that. And then Jada, my friends there, another quick temporary discount going on, $20 off of their brand new version 3 wireless charging pad. Use the coupon code MEMORIAL20. That will actually get you $20 off the charging pad, and then if you want $10 off the USB hub, that's MEMORIAL10. Or if you want to buy both, put them both in your cart, use the coupon code MEMORIAL30, and you will get that combined thing, the $30 off both of them. So again, that new iteration of the wireless charging pad, which I consider an essential accessory, really, because just about every smartphone now supports Qi wireless charging. In fact, Tesla pretty much agrees that it's an essential accessory because they're putting the wireless charging pads in every Model Y. But for now, the Model 3, grab that Jada wireless charging pad and you will be good to go on that. Finally, if you are not already subscribing to the podcast, you can do so free of charge on your favorite podcast service, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, which is in the Tesla, and thank you to the people that alerted me this week to TuneIn not updating with the latest episode. I was able to successfully get in touch with them, and that issue was rectified, so hopefully that will not be a problem moving forward. I'm also on Spotify, and you can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube if you like. It's just audio. There's no video. All you'd see would be a snoring dog on the couch. But yeah, it's just the audio of the show. But if you just prefer to listen on YouTube, if you're at your desk at work, whatever, and YouTube is easy for you, you can subscribe there. Just search Ride the Lightning Tesla, and you'll find my channel very easily. You can follow me on Twitter and or Instagram if you're interested. It's the same username at both, at DMC_Ryan. And then, yeah, finally, just the Patreon. Again, thanks to everybody that heard me last week and got some new patrons this week, which I super duper appreciate. If you didn't hear it last week, or maybe you're still considering it, I will humbly say once again, a lot of time and energy and love goes into this podcast. Hopefully that comes through. Hopefully all those things come through. And if you're willing and able in these uncertain times, I would sincerely appreciate your support on Patreon. It will always be a voluntary thing. The podcast is always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall or anything like that. But if you do choose to support my work here with Ride the Lightning, there are some fun little perks that are part of your Patreon support. There's the early access to the episode, and these all stack, so the higher you go, you get them all. But the early access, then the next one above that is the bonus episode that I mentioned at the top of the show I should be getting done this weekend. There's the Patreon producer shout out at the producer tier, which I'm going to do here in a second. And even if you want to keep going, there's a monthly one-on-one Google Hangout with me if you go that way up the ladder there. So onward, upward, I appreciate any support that you are willing to give. If you want to take a look at the Patreon page and maybe consider a pledge, it's patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. Patreon spelled Patreon. And now I do want to shout out the wonderful Patreon producers, starting with the new ones. Chris Beach, Aaron Altschul, and Steve Radspinner. Thank you all so much for your new support and ongoing support. I sincerely appreciate it. Alongside the existing wonderful crop of Patreon producers: Pete White, Wolfgang Obergen, George Cassiopo, David Brander, Jonathan Wales, Alexi Heft, Logan Willis, Robert Miracle, Jason Chalukas, Joe Edgel, Tim Hyde, Lawton from Chicago, Peter Chalet, David Vakil, Ulrich Lassa, Luke A., Eric Randolph, David Nondahl, Jerry and Mary Smith, Brian Hope, Bill Royko, Lyle Austin, Joel Sapp, Dory and Steve Guberman, Daniel Grummer, Jeremy, Tesla Owners Taiwan, Jeremy Harris, Rob Brewer, Ron Lee, Chris Konesnik, John Cody, Matthew Wright, Charlie Gillespie, Kaz Barnes, Neil Weaver, David Perella, Sunil Joseph, Dennis Peak, Will Stedman, Evie Tricity UK, Stig Mickey Jensen, Jeff Angwin, Chase Cabanillas, Richard Folkers, Matt Kalin, Trenton from Myrtle Beach, the Lydia family, Michael Regal, Mark Eversole, Ish, and Ramey from TeslaProTips.com. Thank you to all of you for your support of the podcast. Every pledge makes it all just collectively adds up. That's the whole point. Everybody, people can pitch in a little, and it adds up to a nice bit that does make a difference, a positive difference in my life and my family's life. So thank you, and I again invite your support if you feel so inclined. All right, for a snoring Daisy the Boxer puppy, my name, of course, is Ryan McCaffrey. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time and attention. That it's so valuable, your time particularly, and I don't take that lightly. I appreciate that you generously give me that hour plus every week, and I try to make the best use of that time, try to have some fun, talk Tesla, just this wonderful hobby and enthusiasm that we collectively share. So I wish you a safe, happy, and healthy week, and until next time, happy electric motoring.
I mean, I think a Tesla is the most fun thing you could possibly buy ever. That's what it's meant to be. Our goal is to make it's not exactly a car. It's actually a thing to maximize enjoyment. It's maximum fun.